So, thank you for coming this morning. You're welcome. You're welcome, the remote viewers. It's wonderful to have you here. And this is the day we are celebrating the Pisces full moon. Pisces brings a very interesting energy. It brings the old age in, and it also is trying to push us into the new age. So we have people who are born with their sun in Pisces, or their rising sign is Pisces, and some Pisces you're going to find that are, very stuck in the old age of thinking and living and doing things. And then you have the newer type of Piscean, and that Pisces person is going to be responsive to the planet Mercury. The planet Mercury is the esoteric ruling planet of Pisces, and it makes them very sensitive to their higher self. So where the old kind of Pisces person, not old in age necessarily, but you can have a 5-year-old Pisces that's still functioning in the old world, let's say. They're very emotional, depressive, self-serving, trying to build their ego. It's very interesting to see how that type of Piscean person is struggling to get into the new world, to get into the new age. And so their life will be a life of pain and suffering until they make that breakthrough and get kind of push the past aside and start thinking about their potential, thinking about their possibilities, thinking about their purpose in this particular incarnation. And as they begin to think in that way, almost magically what happens is they become sensitive to what we call the higher self, which is this little picture that I've drawn on the board. Now, every zodiacal sign, in this case Pisces, has certain qualities, certain rays, certain energies that at the particular time of each full moon, these energies begin to pour forth through the constellation, from the constellation to the sun, to the planets and the ruling rays, they're called. And eventually, all this energy comes together, precipitates into the planet, into the world, into humanity, and finally to ourselves. Now, if you're a Pisces person, you're going to really feel this energy strongly. And by being a Pisces person, I'm talking about sun in Pisces, moon in Pisces, rising sign in Pisces. I'm not going to go into all the details because I have a lot more to share this morning, but just cover the essentials. So the essential is, let's say that you have Pisces, sun, moon, rising sign, or like in my case, I have Jupiter and Pisces in the first house, and that makes me a very strong Pisces, so to speak. And I won't explain, so to speak. Come see me later. What is happening is that our higher self is really strongly being ignited during this time of the Pisces full moon, and we're right in that time now. It started yesterday, today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. It'll be very, very strong, and Wednesday. And we're going to, some of us may feel a vibration at the top of our head, in this area. You may feel heat. Sometimes you may feel lightheaded. But the most important thing is, if these things occur, is to be aware that guidance is coming to you. And that guidance, in terms of Pisces, starts out as the will to unite. The reason that we have the will to unite is that Piscean is very strong Ray 2 energy. And the higher octave of Ray 2 is the will to unite. So as this energy comes into, it's just like a vortex or a pathway comes into the higher self, that then becomes assimilated into our consciousness, and this guidance begins to inspire us with ideas called the will to unify. So we go from the will to unite, which is the higher octave of this ray 2, into the will to unify. Now, if our higher self is not functioning, then we're not going to be responsive, we're not going to register these energies. But let's say that we all are sensitive and we all are registering this energy. So we're going to have an impulse, a strong impulse during the, would you say February 19th to March 19th to 20th, during all these days of Pisces, but particularly during the full moon, of wanting to unify our physical, emotional, mental body to start with, organize our life, and then ultimately to become what is called a cause. And that's the other energy of Pisces. The ray 2 is the will to unify, and the ray 6 is the will to cause. So I'm going to be talking basically this morning about the will to cause and what that means. So I have this other little diagram up here on the board. To be a cause. To be a cause is the opposite of being an effect. Putting, as simply as possible. But to be a cause means that we have been inspired with vision and motive and have willpower to put it into action. So these three words, projection, picture, and energy, I just put this up on the board so you'll have an image to look at as I'm sharing, these words today. Now, this lecture was given many, many years ago by Torgrim Saradarian. So I thought it would be nice to share this great teacher's information about Pisces, because it's very profound. It might be a little challenging to understand, but by looking at these images, then you can use your creative imagination and just imagine, like he is saying here, that Pisces brings two very powerful energies to the planet. Okay, so these powerful energies I've written on the board, the will to unite, which becomes the will to unify, and then we have the will to be a cause. So there's a lot of energy surrounding us, swirling around us, like the snow that was blowing around. I'm trying to clean the car off this morning. And I know, what an image. But it is that kind of energy that is swirling around us. And this is why people lose it during the full moon time. They have meltdowns, they get upset, road rage, all kinds of things. But that is the lower octave. See, the higher octave is the octave of creativity. It's a more refined energy, whereas the energy that is causing road rage and anger and so forth is coarse, obviously, is coarser. So we don't want to fall into the trap of having to be an effect, meaning the anger and the meltdowns and the road rage and slamming doors and whatever we do during a Pisces full moon from that lower octave self. So this is what he says. He says that disciples and aspirants, disciples mean what? It means that we are devoted to serving the planet. We are devoted to the spiritual hierarchy. We are devoted to service. So he is saying disciples and aspirants, we are conscious builders of the future. Conscious builders of the future. So that we can take this will to cause as it's stated here, and use it as an energy to begin to project ourselves into the future, to project our motives, to project our ideals, to project our vision and inspiration into the future, which means that especially during the full moon times, and in this case Pisces, is that we want to take this energy and use it in a way that will manifest in form some of these ideals that we have, some of these goals that are a reflection of our vision. So to cause means to have a vision, a motive, and willpower. See, to cause means to have a vision, a motive, and willpower. The motive, he says, is the picture within us. So many of us think in terms of images. Particularly if you're a meditator, you begin to think in images rather than words, which is a kind of a higher stage of consciousness for certain meditators, but you begin to have images that come to you, just like in your dreams. We don't have dreams made of words, right? But we have dreams that are made of images. So these images then are part of our vision, which then becomes projected through a picture, and then the energy of willpower impulses us during these 5 to 7 days of the full moon to really do something with it. The motive is the picture within us that we are going to actualize. We're going to actualize this picture within us into our future. We're going to project it into the future. Now, this image that we are going to build for our future is like an arrow that is flying out towards space, and it creates a tremendous magnetism. And eventually we become a cause rather than an effect. So for example, we create our own bodies. Each one of us created our physical, emotional, mental body the way we wanted to, and this is what we ended up with. Okay. This may be a good thing, or maybe something that's still, something that we're working on. What they call it, a work in progress, right? I know you're thinking. So we created our life and our relationships, but when we created our life, and this is important to think about, when we created our life, the conditions, the relationships in our bodies, we have become united with and identified with the effects. We have become united with and identified with the effects. We created things, and then we became these things. So you see how we're moving now from this higher energy of the will to unite into the will to unify and then attachment. So we have created hang-ups, and we have become our hang-ups. See, this is the old world of Pisces. The old world of Pisces, where we created our hang-ups and became our hang-ups. We created dreams and glamours and the objects of our desires. And when we became the effect, we stopped being the cause, and this is the human downfall. Not just, of our personal self, but of humanity, until there's a spiritual awakening, which I do think, and many people think, is occurring. Imagine a king who is very powerful and beautiful, ruling over millions of people. One day he drinks or he dopes himself, and he becomes what? He becomes a puppet. His people tie strings to his feet, to his hands, to his mouth, and whatever string they pull, then he moves. This is what man is. Mankind has become a puppet. You can see this in yourself. You can see anybody who is has some kind of drug addiction, alcohol addiction. You know, it's not that we're against alcohol or we're against drugs. It's drugs and alcohol are against us. See, drugs and alcohol work against us. It works against our freedom. It makes us a puppet so that whatever string, you know, is pulled in our nature, we then, our whole life becomes an effect rather than a cause. If we are not a cause, that means we have lost that beautiful state of consciousness that is so creative and gives us a freedom that most people don't know is possible to experience. And they've become a puppet, and then they say they're independent. You see, these drugs and this alcohol makes me do anything that I want to do. Okay, and that's how independent I am. And this is why I can continue to smoke and dope and drink and, you know, because I'm so free and I'm so independent. Okay, but those around and about you see you in a very different way. You know, they see you as an effect. They see you as a victim. So we move our hands and we think we are moving our hands. But other forces, glamours, illusions, influences, and impressions are moving us. But we are so happy. Wait to that 5 o'clock wine, and I am so happy. I don't drink wine, but a lot of people do. You can't turn on a TV program without seeing a 5 o'clock drink fest. You know, and it seems so, but it seems so natural because we see it everywhere. It seems so natural until we become a slave of that 5 o'clock drink fest. So we say, we are so free, I'm so free. But what are we free from? We become a slave to our emotions, to our mind, to our drives and urges, to our dreams and desires, to our fears and anxieties and hang-ups, and I've got a whole list here. You know? So the idea here is that we want to really get serious about our life and ask ourselves, you know, where is my freedom? You know, what part of my life am I really experiencing freedom in? We call ourselves a free people, a free nation. So where is that freedom if we are still living a life of slavery, a life of being an effect? Only by being a cause can we be a free person. Only if we become a cause can we be a free person. As long as we are a slave, we are an effect. We talk, think, feel, and react because of outside influences and forces. This is an interesting comment. Other entities use us. Telepathically, the thoughts of other people come to us and use us. I know this is very heavy. I was concerned because this is a very heavy talk, but hey, we can handle it, you know. And we could say, I don't believe in it, and just, you know, erase it from our memory. But what a waste of time that would be. Really. It just is very difficult to see because we are so identified with what we are now. It's just really difficult to see. But once we begin to see that our nature, our life, and so forth is an effect, not a cause, this is the moment we wake up. And as Torkin was saying in his lecture, this is a moment of salvation. This is where we are saving ourselves. Okay? It's when we awaken and we begin to see who we truly are, where our soul becomes our authority, and not the impositions of other people's opinions and prejudices and so on and so forth, that's pulling all of these puppet strings, okay, that are making us an effect. So once we see that we are an effect, not the cause, is the minute we begin to awaken, spiritually awaken. And before we know it, we realize that we have a divine origin. That divine origin is called a soul. And it is that soul that represents that divine presence within us. And it is the soul that makes us a cause. It is our soul that makes us an authority. It is our soul that gives us this willpower and energy to move into a life of freedom. Groups and corporations and nations are also living a life of being an effect. They all act because some string is pulled within them, and they deceive themselves into thinking that they are free people. Freedom starts when we use something called discrimination. Freedom starts when we begin to use discrimination. Discrimination, careful discrimination, teaches us what to do and what not to do. Basically, it just means to take a moment before we make a decision, go within, and ask ourselves, is this mine to do? Yes, no. Discrimination also helps us with right speech, knowing what to talk about and what not to talk about. That's practicing discrimination. And it's interesting, discrimination is such an ugly word in the American use of the word, of the language, but in spiritual use, discrimination is a soul power. Soul power, because we are making decisions from this energy that is coming into that higher self. So as our soul begins to function in the light of the higher self, then we have a sensitivity, and that sensitivity increases until we soon realize, discrimination is a great tool for us to use. So we know what to talk about and what not to talk about. Why we are thinking the way we are thinking. Are we really talking, or somebody else influencing us? Why are we talking? Is jealousy making us talk? Or is hatred and separatism and fears and desires causing us to act? So discrimination means to find out who is really talking when you speak. Isn't that interesting? It is to me. One day I was talking with a gentleman who boasted to me, and he said, I'm a very powerful man. Now this is Torkim's writing. He says, I'm a very powerful man. And as he spoke, a cigarette dangled out of his mouth. I mean, this was like 20 years ago. You can see how things have changed. You don't see too many cigarettes dangling out of people's mouths anymore. And if they are, they're in the back of the building, outside. Anyway, so he said, you're not powerful because you are the slave of that little cigarette. If you are a slave, how powerful are you? If a little cigarette can conquer you, if a little cigarette can conquer you, and you can be the slave of that cigarette, then you are an effect and not a cause. So where is your power? And where is your willpower? We can become a cause if we slowly dominate our physical, emotional, and mental natures and become a master of them. When we go toward effects, we go toward darkness and limitation and sickness. When we go to causes, we go toward spirit. We expand. We slowly, in this expansion, we slowly come in tune with that great life. That is the cause. So joy and happiness and bliss and creativity wait for those who are striving to be causes, not effects. Okay, so let me repeat this. Joy, happiness, and bliss. The joy, happiness, bliss, and creativity, this is what's waiting for us. As we increase that sensitivity, let this Piscean energy come into our consciousness so that we can awaken and begin to develop ourselves as a cause. And in this process, this is when we experience joy. It's when we experience happiness, when we experience what Joseph Campbell used to call bliss. Remember that, follow your bliss? A liar can control thousands of people if they are an effect, if they are puppets. He is the cause, even though he is a dark cause, this liar. He is a cause, even though he is a dark cause. Most of us are so trusting. You know, we are vulnerable, and it's very interesting because I think as children we have been raised to trust. In the church we have been raised to trust. But there's a lot missing behind that. In trust requires us to think. Trust requires intuition. Trust wants us to be a cause and not an effect. When we are so burdened with layers of effect that, like the puppet controlling us, then it's extremely difficult to recognize when a person's lying to us. And this is why we, read these horrible stories of ridiculous things happening when, as a thinking person, you say, how could all those people drink the Kool-Aid? Attorneys, doctors. I've got a whole book full of stories like that. And you wonder, how can intelligent people follow a liar? It's because they themselves are an effect. Now I want to share this story. Again, it's from his writing. He says, those who are awakened are like the little boy in the story of the emperor's clothes. Now, I know some of you know this story, but it bears repeating. This little boy discovered something very unusual. There once was a king sitting very comfortably and happily on his throne. 3 liars came and said, "King, we are going to make a robe for you. The material we are going to use is so transparent and beautiful. This material has a secret power." Now, you know this is going to appeal to the king. It has a secret power. Whoever cannot see this cloth on you is not fit for his duties and responsibilities. Now, this is a pivoting point of this story, so let me repeat it. Whoever cannot see this cloth on you is not fit for his duties and responsibilities. So in this way, you can find out who is fit for your kingdom and who is not. As the liars were weaving the king's robe, the king ordered his right-hand man to go and check their work. When he arrived, the liar said to him, "Look how beautiful this material is. Don't you agree?" He said, yes, it is so beautiful. It will be really fitting for our king. The man did not see anything, not really, but he was afraid that if he had told the king the truth, the king would say he was not fit for his duties and release him. So the right-hand man went to the king and said, my lord, it is magnificent. Ah, I am glad you think so, said the king. Then he sent another 10 people to see the robe, and they all came back with the same reports. Then the king said, okay, let me go and see it myself. So he went to the sewing room and he found the 3 liars measuring and taping and fitting, and they were saying, here, no, this way, no, that way. But there was no fabric. Then the liars pretended to fit the robe on the king. And the king said, my goodness, this really fits me. It looks good, doesn't it? I know. The king was afraid that if he told the people that he could not see the material, they would think he was not fit for the throne, and they would throw him out. Okay, so the day of the parade comes. The liar dressed the king, but he was totally naked. He sat on a big white horse and rode through the streets, everybody applauding him, saying, how beautiful is the king. Suddenly a child looked and said, but the king is naked. Then everybody took courage and started to see things as they were. The king was so ashamed, but before he could catch the liars, they had disappeared. So we may laugh at such stories, but this is how we live our own lives. We build our lives on effects, on things that do not exist, because remember, only causes exist. So if we want to exist, we must be a cause. In the month of Pisces, we have a chance to set into motion, with proper engineering and wisdom, those causes that will produce a great future for us. We can make decisions and set our motives and our visions right. We must exercise our own willpower to abide in the cause of creating a life that is not an effect, but the cause itself in manifestation. Do you see this? Okay. It's like a flower. A flower is a cause. It is itself. As man tries to be himself, to free himself from the influences that mislead him and direct him toward matter and darkness and unreality. Okay, as man frees himself from these things, as he frees himself from these things, as we free ourselves from these things, then we are becoming our true self. As we become more our true selves, then we increase in joy, and we increase in our creativity, and we become an action in the world that awakens people and leads them to be a cause, or leads them to causality. In the esoteric teaching, we learn that there is a causal level and also a causal body within man. Our intention is to pass physical, emotional, and lower mental levels and enter into that clear light, that causal body, that higher self, where we can see the future, the vision, and our motive, and exercise our willpower to actualize ourselves. Do you think it's possible? Yes. Say this as a choir of people. Absolutely. So self-actualization means to bloom our own flower, our lotus, to manifest ourself. There is a prayer in Sanskrit which says, Avira Virma Yati, which means, O self-revealing one, reveal thyself in me. See, that's that divine mechanism that we call a soul, that great presence within us. How do we become an effect? When we follow people without discrimination. We become an effect. To be an effect means to be a puppet. And we see this in our teenagers' lives where they think they're being so independent from mom and dad and this person, that person, that person. But it's just the opposite of that. They are puppets. People are using them. Their drugs, their alcoholism and stuff that just horrifies me that they're doing. I can't even pronounce the words of the things that they are using, to dope themselves with today. And they're saying, look at how powerful I look, and look at how independent I am. But what happens is when they reach their mid-20s, sometimes 30, they've lost their brain. There's no way that they can open themselves up to this higher self because they've destroyed this wonderful gift. So that's why we want to teach our children, think before you act. Be discriminating. Is this friend leading you to the right place or taking you to the wrong place? And then exercise our willpower. Millions of young people are mechanically following the life of their desires and illusions and pleasures. And they are becoming unified, attached to that silly life. So how can we pull them up and say, discriminate, do not follow these things? To discriminate means what? In essence, this is the beautiful thing. It means to use our divine mind. Our divine mind will tell us that a path is dark and don't follow it. Because if we do, we will become an effect. We will become more matter, more dense, and less spiritual. To be matter means you are going far away from the center of your core. And as we go out of ourselves, we are exposing ourselves to tremendous dangers, right? Right. As we go toward our self, our true self, we come closer to the God within, to the glory within, to the power within. And eventually we become one with the one cause. Okay, I think I can finish this and then we'll have a nice meditation. Whenever we follow the examples of others, we become an effect. So for example, she did her hair like this. I'm going to do mine just the same way. If you've been watching television the last week, what's coming up tonight? The red carpet. The what is it? Exactly. So I've been listening to these ridiculous interviews with how much money that woman's dress cost, how much jewelry are they draping around, millions of dollars, with no exaggeration. And they said they have to do this. If they're on the red carpet, they have to wear this, they have to wear that. And then, despite all the millions of dollars that they have spent, then they are criticized. Whether, the fashion designers and pundits approve it or not approve it. Yeah, there you go, the liars. Yeah, well, is that what it means to be an actor and an actress? Not all of them. There are some really beautiful actors and actresses that are really, really trying to make breakthroughs, into the movie tradition, and trying to bring truth into the world again instead of effects. So if we want to follow the path of life, become a cause. That doesn't mean to be rebellious. It means to become sensitive to the impulse of the higher self. Become sensitive to the impulse of your unfolding human soul. And to leave the effects alone, because effects are the residue of our life. Leave them behind like an exhaust pipe and go forward toward causality. This is Pisces. So when I say this is Pisces, this is the energy that we are being bathed in right now. So we can change our life in any way we want to. Not the way somebody else tells us, but the way we want to change it. Today and tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday, and see what it brings. What kind of joy, what kind of happiness, what kind of bliss it brings into our day-to-day life. Only courageous, strong souls can achieve that causal beingness. Emerson once said, "Nations stand on the pillars of those who have really achieved." A nation is raised by the pillars, which are really causes and not effects. Such people make decisions which cannot be changed by their emotional body. See, their mental bodies, their glamours, their hatreds, or selfish interests. They are focused and they are anchored in their own souls. See, and that means that their soul is their authority. So we are left with this challenge. Do not please people's glamours, illusions, hatreds, interests, and wrong motives. So what did you think? Pretty powerful, right?